to the Quiet Warrior Show, where we help top leaders find their pathway to incredible success and a lifetime of happiness. Here is your host, Tom Dutta, the Quiet Warrior.
Well, welcome to the Quiet Warrior Show. My name is Tom Dutta. I am the Quiet Warrior, and I'm excited to have on my show today Rachel Mushahwar. Hey, Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I am honored to be part of it.
I'm honored to have you on. I'm so excited. We were talking offline, chatting a little bit about our backgrounds. And listen, this is all about you. So we'll start by asking you to tell us a bit about yourself.
Sure. So, I have a 25-year history in enterprise IT. I started out in college studying civil engineering of all things, and quickly learned through a variety of internships and jobs that I was super passionate about how technology can help differentiate businesses and how they can use technology as a springboard for growth. And I've been in technology ever since. But prior to that, I grew up in a very, very rural town in southern Colorado. I graduated with 32 kids in my high school class. So you can imagine, going from that environment to where I am now, there has been lots of lessons learned. And I never call them failures, because it's only a failure if you haven't learned from it. So lots and lots of lessons learned in, growing up in a cattle ranch all the way to hanging out in Silicon Valley at Intel, where I'm currently the vice president and general manager of our U.S. enterprise, commercial, government, and cloud sales. So,
Wow.
Big difference.
No, absolutely. And boy, do we ever have a lot of lessons that I'm sure we're going to learn. Rachel, it's just great to have you on the show. I mean, I already was madly making some notes here. I'm going to actually take it back to you from you and let you catch your breath for a moment. I want to build you up a bit, because this is really about authentic leaders coming on the show, sharing their stories so others can learn. And I wrote down the farm and then from the farm to what you're doing now. And it's like, wow, what a transformation in a career. What a journey. I want to tell people a bit more about the greatness behind Rachel here. 25 years, yes. I mean, it's remarkable. A woman successful in business, growing quickly from the farm. Today, you're responsible for over $4 billion in sales. I mean, there are people in leadership positions that never in their lifetime have that type of responsibility. Certainly a lot of learnings from there. You're not only a woman who understands technology, you went to get your education as well, Columbia's Graduate School of Business in New York. You bring to the world not only an understanding of vision and strategy, but how, I think you used the word, differentiating, but how this whole world is changing with technology is fascinating. And then the last thing is, and you're very humble, which I appreciate, you've been recognized some pretty significant awards. You were recently named as the U.S. Businesswoman of the Year by Insight Success, named by ChainStoreAge as one of the top 10 women in technology, and Women's Wear Daily listed you as the top industry transformer. It goes on and on and on. So here we have this leader who started on the farm and is now responsible for all this. Rachel, take us back. I mean, get us into your story. I call it the hero's journey of growing up from the farm and how this all happened.
Yeah, no, perfect. So, I don't know that my story is, any more unique than many of the other stories that are out there. I just have, I'm humbled by the opportunity to be able to share it. And if we roll all the way back, my grandparents were immigrants, and they weren't your typical immigrants. My grandfather and his brother were put on a boat by their parents in the late 1800s with an address written on a piece of paper and about $50 in their pocket out of Lebanon, and told, you need to make it to the United States. Here's the address where your aunt is. And my grandfather was 9 and his brother was 11.
Wow.
They never saw their parents again. And that, that tenacity and that entrepreneurship, and the value of relationships and the value of really painting a vision and then figuring out how to get there started way back before I was born. And that's just on my dad's side of the family. On my mom's side of the family, they were actually the first pioneers of Colorado.
Wow.
So you couple those two, genealogies as the parents that I grew up with, you really get from a really young age the importance of hard work, the importance of, never do a job that you wouldn't do yourself or you haven't already done. And certainly one of the resounding things that came out of my childhood from both sets of my grandparents was, don't ever let the horizon of what you can see define where you can go. And
Wow.
I pause now and I think about, hey, I've got a 13-year-old son, an 11-year-old daughter, a 9-year-old daughter, and an 8-year-old son. I can't imagine putting them on a boat with $50 in their pocket and an address and saying, I love you so much. I know you will have a better life, but it's not in this country, and hoping and that they make it.
Wow.
That doesn't happen in today's age.
No, it doesn't. Rachel, I just want to jump in there. I mean, my mind is going in so many different directions. I just want to make a few comments that when you say you're an immigrant, I mean, that just stirs my heartstrings. I remember my parents are born and raised in the Fiji Islands. I was born on a military base in the UK, and it was the same story. My parents had an uncle here and said, this is where we're going to raise the family. I've met countless people who have had the courage, like you, to have family members leave countries on a boat with no money, come to a greater country. It just blows my mind at that courage, how frightful or fearful it is to land in a new place, perhaps not even speaking the language, a land of opportunity. And how do you take all that and develop it into the new life? How do you adapt? What a great first part of the story that you've told us. I really love how you've taken the seeds that your grandparents planted in their stories, and you've taken those and turned them into empowerment. And I think I wrote that down here about that's a teaching moment you've given us. Don't let the horizons of what you can see define where you go. So here we are, and you're in America, and you're not yet into your career. You're a woman in America getting into a career. How did you navigate that? What drove you to get to where you are as not only vice president, but overseeing such broad responsibility?
For me, it's really been about two things that I always hold in my mind, right? Life is about the people that you meet and the things that you get to go create with them. And I've also learned, right, Maya Angelou says it best. And what she said was, I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Yeah.
And when you really think about where the world is going, even with the continued advancements of technology, it still comes down to people. How do you change the world to make it a better place for people? How do you connect people? What are the things that we need to go create to solve cancer? How do we stop, all of the terrible things from happening? Still comes back to people. And that's what it's been about for me.
Absolutely. And I had written down here while you were talking initially, counting in my mind the number of children you have. I mean, here you are in business. I know from just talking to you, lining up this interview, that you're a busy lady in many places at one time, raising 4 children. Tell us about that part of your career. I think it can be a teaching moment there. Let's be real about the fact that there still isn't always an even playing field in business for between men and women, that women had traditional roles and there's traditional beliefs still out there. And raising the family, looking after children, and all this balance and choices women have to make. My wife is a career manager in one of the banks. She had to make choices along the way, and as a couple, we had to support each other. But there are others who have, the dream you had coming to America, but are held back by limitations that really aren't theirs. They're limitations put in their way. Tell us about your biggest challenges, how you overcame that, and balancing and raising children while creating this career that you have.
Well, I want to be 100% transparent here, Tom. I think there are so many executive women that you see on the front covers of all these magazines who frankly make it look like their life is perfect and they're so blessed and their kids are so well behaved and life is great. That could be the furthest thing from the truth.
Yeah.
What I have found is I don't think women talk enough about the struggles that they have in, choosing to have a family and choosing to have a high-powered career. They don't talk about how difficult it is. They don't talk about the fact that, they're the only mom in the pickup line that's on a conference call at the same time they're trying to get kids into the car and home. They don't talk about the fact that their kids will say things to me or to them on a regular basis like, geez, mommy, you're leaving again? What's more important, your job or us? People don't talk about that because it's taboo. And part of what I've started to do, Tom, is talk about those things. Because we can't change the outcome and we can't create a future that's better for all of us unless someone's willing to stand up and say, this is how it really is. And let me tell you, women are told so many times during their lives that they can't be good at multiple things at once. Women are told you have kids and you can't climb too high in your career. We're told you can't run a board meeting and carpool. We're told you can't run a company and care for your family in the way they need to be cared for. We're told that we can't bring home the bacon and fry it in the pan, right? We're told, oh, you're too pretty. You won't be taken seriously. But here's the key there, Tom. If we don't talk about it, nothing will change. And I'll tell you, none of those parables are true. Not one of them. I think that's the secret that women hold. That's our power. That's the magic and our strength. We are the contradiction in all of those statements, right? Women are told this and that. The bottom line is we are the and. We can earn advanced degrees after the kids go to bed and still pay the bills. We can raise our kids to the best of our ability and impact our company's EPS. Many of us are executives for some of the largest companies on the planet and still answer the plastic phone when our 7-year-old hands it to us.
I love that. I just want to go back. You're taking me in another direction, my mind. I so love this story. I love you and the story for this reason, in that when I'm talking to you, I wrote the word down, transformational, and you and I both know this from our work in business, that having somebody follow you, or somebody, the path to doing something different and growing, transforming, is through the heart, not through the head. And when I hear you speak as a woman who is able to show vulnerability, is able to talk about the stigma. It's funny because I have a passion for mental health. I've done 10 years volunteer work there at a board level, and I have that in my family lines. The difference between living the stigma, I say, and lifting the stigma of mental health is talking about it, breaking the silence. It's so refreshing to hear you. I made a comment, your comment about, women in business. The thing I've learned is the subconscious mind has rules and information put in it that is absolutely not true. And wow, you gave us a teaching moment here by reminding us that, and to all the women listening who are in leadership or climbing the ladder, that many of those things you're told are not true. And this is absolutely what I've observed. The thing is that I read some research recently that said boards work more effectively with women on them. Companies, I believe, female leadership, because it's been documented that women in leadership can be more transformational. They can use that part of their emotions to get people to their hearts to make change, versus transactional leadership, which I think men in general are good at. Do this and you'll get your bonus. It's far different. So it's great to see that you're one of those who's a thought leader who's inspiring people to follow you. Talk about, I love that line about answering the plastic cell phone. I remember when I was early in my career, I orphaned my daughter. She's in university now as an engineer on the other side of our country. I remember giving her a tiny little cell phone, one of those flip phones. And I remember used to say to people on the airplanes, I'm a frequent flyer, not a frequent father. And when my daughter left for university, and I'll give it back to you to talk about your family, she said this to me. We were having a conversation and I was almost in tears knowing she was leaving for the other side of the country. And she made a comment. She said, Dad, you were never there. And it made me reflect back on the choices I made to be in business and maybe make some sacrifice in my time. Tell us about how, on the family, how you raise 4 children and still do all the things, delivering the results to your organization. But what are some of your tips and tricks to keeping that connection with your kids?
So there's a couple things. You talked a little bit about all these rules or all of these, voices that people have inside of their head that tell you what good looks like. And one of my most basic tips is I've actually named that voice in my head Becky. And we all have it, whether you're a man or a woman. And you have that voice in your head that tells you you're not good enough. You're not a good enough parent, or you're not good enough to, be running a $4 billion sales organization, or you're not a good enough dad. We all have them. And when my voice starts to talk, I just have to tell my voice in my head, thank you for your opinion, Becky. However, I have gotten here in spite of all the things that this person inside my head is telling me. And I will continue to be successful because I've got the opportunity to learn from so many that went before me. But really understanding when it's that inner voice in your head that's telling you you're not good enough and just shutting it down and refocusing, honestly, was one of the easiest yet hardest things for me to go do. And I think the second thing really comes down to, everyone talks about quality over quantity. And when you're a kid, they don't care about quality. They see quantity. They see quantity, and they see, everybody else shows up for these things. Mom, you don't. What's going on? And it's a hard conversation to really have with your children around, hey, here's some of the things that I'm choosing to go do. And I have to have a conversation with them around, hey, look, everybody can be ambitious, and we can still make time to attend your class parties. Everybody has to make different choices. At the end of the day, this is your life. It's not your kid's life. It's not your spouse's life. It's not what your parents want you to go do. It's your life. Whether you have kids, you don't have kids, you have a spouse, you don't have a spouse, you have a career on pause. It's tragic. It's triumphant. It's messy. It's magical. There's no specific formula for what works. But whatever your choice is, you've got to make it count. You've got to make it count every single minute that you're there. And you think about the conversations you have with your children. Had this conversation with my 13-year-old this weekend around his schooling and where the jobs are at in the future. Right? There's some stunning statistics out there that talk about the fact that 38% of the jobs over the next 10 years haven't even been invented yet.
Wow.
38%. So what does that mean for your children? What does that mean for the time that you're going to spend with your children and how you're going to interact with them? Those are the kinds of things that we have to sit down and say, okay, hey, here's the things that are important for your future. Yes, I might not be able to pick you up from school every day, but here's the things that I can help you with. I might not be able to help you day to day with your algebra or your biology, but I can help you make decisions and mature and think about things in a way that other parents can't. And I can help you get a job in the future just by helping you understand some of these things. It's different. It's not better. It's just different. And you've got to be, again, let's go back to what I said, right? This is your life. It's tragic. It's triumphant. It's messy. It's magical. Sometimes your kids get out of the car in the morning with their hair completely undone and goldfish spilling out of the van like this morning and me telling them to hurry up because I was on a conference call. But whatever your choice is, you've got to make it count. You've got to tell that little voice in the back of your head, you are enough.
I love that. And I wrote that
down. You are
down.
Good enough.
I wrote that down just now. If I could tell you how many times I heard that you're not good enough in my lifeline, especially as a kid, I would run out of fingers and toes. It's interesting because in many of the leaders that I interview, that this keeps coming up as a thread, and it's such a teaching moment. So proud of this lesson you gave us, that when you find leaders, I hear this from you, I've heard this from others, that when they look back, there's usually this, some have called it a chip on their shoulder, some have called it something from their past that just drives them. There's terms like imposter syndrome, can I really do this? There's that little girl, little boy voice in us. I love the concept of slaying Becky, telling Becky, thank you very much, that but I'm not listening to you, I've got my own thoughts. I just love that. I think I'm gonna call my little voice Tommy. But here's the thing that I love about what you just told us about your children. This is the part I saw in your bio and why I'm inspired. I want to say this and give it back to you to talk about technology and transformation for a couple minutes. And that the world is changing. I've done some research myself and learned they're even saying at the universities, I have some people I know in the role of deans at a local university that say, you know what, we're teaching courses today and people are buying education and getting degrees that will be worthless in 10 years. We don't even know how to teach the future. And when I heard what you said about jobs and what a blessing, I think of my daughter who's in fourth year university, and all she looks at is the price to live in our country, $1 million home and getting into the market. And I give her that same message that the world's changing. The jobs that are going to be out there are being created, and it's what you are doing now that's going to give you huge opportunity. I'm so proud of the fact that somebody like you is not only you have a belief and a vision in your career, but you are a mom and you're paying the ultimate price to push through and be a trailblazer to help create the future of this world. And that's something that I believe if I was one of your children in future, I would say, you know what, my mom wasn't always there. Now I understand why. She was great when she was, but the world we have today is part of people like her who push through the wall. The first through the wall always gets bloody, and decided to create this future that we're all part of. Tell us about technology. I'm inspired by the background you have. I don't know a lot about it because mine was general management. CEO was sort of my background. But this digital transformation or how technology is changing, I want to say that in your bio, it said somewhere that you help companies differentiate themselves using technology. And it might remind the audience that, Rachel leads 9 different industry verticals in the company of Intel: cloud, retail, transformation, manufacturing, energy, financial services, media, entertainment, health, life. I'm not reading your bio for any reason. I'm reading it to say that it's incredible what's happening with the world with technology. So what are you teaching people? How do they differentiate themselves about a future that maybe they don't even know exists yet?
Yeah, no. And And geez, when you read my bio, it sounds a lot crazier than it really is. But for me, it's really about what's changing out there. What are the kinds of technologies that companies need to think about, right? You think about something as basic as Uber or Airbnb, right? These are companies now that, when was the last time you used an Uber? For me, it was a couple days ago.
Yeah.
And it becomes such an ingrained part of our culture that people forget to think about, geez, how did Uber come to be? And what was the disruption that Uber caused to the taxi companies, right? It was really around customer centricity and the fact that Uber figured out, how do I do this faster? The same with Airbnb, right? Largest hospitality company in the world that owns 0 hotels. Alibaba, largest retailer in the world. You know how much inventory Alibaba has? 0. So it's really about talking to companies about, this is your opportunity for a corporate renaissance. How do you take the technology and really leapfrog your competitors? And I usually talk to people about the fact that, every company has a plan. And I quote my favorite philosopher, Mike Tyson, and say, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face.
I can feel that.
And that is right. But that's no more true for corporations than it is for being in the ring. Yeah. You think about the fact that we're moving into this world where technology and software and machines start analyzing all these patterns that were hidden before. We can optimize our software to tell a plane which altitude to fly to get the best fuel efficiency. We can predict which vehicles are going to break down or inside of a factory. What's the predictive maintenance that's needed? We can use technology to identify the precise piece of DNA that is causing some type of disease. That's the world that we're in, and that's the world that we're continuing to move into. So how do companies really take that and change it? So a couple just interesting quotes, right? By 2020, which, is not that far away, by 2020, Tom, 50% of the workforce is going to be millennials. And we will be at a point in history where we've got 5 different generations of the workforce in one spot.
Wow.
How does that change how companies think about what do they do? How do they continue to grow their earnings? Where do they need to recruit from? How do they train people? Another interesting statistic, 40% of the businesses in the top 20 of every single industry are on track to be disrupted, not by their traditional competitors, but by companies they never saw coming. Technology is continuing to outpace more than ever before. We are in this accelerated transformation. Everything from, think about Wi-Fi. And the conversation I have with my kids when they're on an airplane is, you guys don't understand, Wi-Fi wasn't a standard. And now you expect it everywhere. And when it's slow on an airplane, you're 30,000 feet in the air in a tin can. But it doesn't compute for them. Google was registered in 1997. Facebook, 2004. The first iPhone launched in 2007. That seems like eons ago, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, I was writing down a few words as you were talking. I'm just going to throw a few things out here. My mind's going in so many different directions. Great conversation. I mean, when you talk about the experience, the customer experience that's caused by technology, I had an experience just yesterday. My wife and I went. We have a 6-pack of seasons tickets to local theater, and I saw a great theatrical play called A Thousand Suns, and A Thousand Splendid Suns, and it was actually about a family's trek from Afghanistan to America, and it focused all about the human rights issues around women in Afghanistan and how they're treated. A rather horrible show to watch in some cases, but very freeing. And I came home. That's a different story. If you ever hear that in America, it's worthwhile going and seeing. But here's the thing. I started thinking about when you said technology. I bought my wife the book from the show. I said to Anna, you need to probably get the book because it's going to be even more detailed. Amazon shipped it and had it by Prime in my doorstep. In the book, I opened the package yesterday. I created this experience of a dinner for my wife, and I was going to surprise her with the book. And in horror, I opened the package. The book was bent. It was bent in half. It was a hardcover. I get on the line on the internet. I click Amazon, They do a refund. They actually not only did the refund, they sent me an email a split second later with labels that I print out. Boom, you stick them on the package. All postage is paid. I walked it down to the village where I live. I was going to get the fish from my fishmonger for dinner. I drop it off at the mail, no charges. It's on its way back to Amazon. As soon as I get back to home, about an hour later, my computer says, your refund is being processed to your credit card. I mean, what an incredible experience. I said to my wife, I said, you know what? There are other companies out there that I deal with that are nowhere near that kind of technology. You talk about disruptive technology. You're absolutely right. I just love that. My biggest fear is that the next generation are millennials. They're coming up. You and I both know that they want to work for purposeful companies. They're a very different generation. They want to work differently. This is my daughter's generation. But the learning curve of technology, it is so steep and so fast. And keeping up with what hasn't happened yet is just amazing. So I'm glad that people like you are out there. I also think about the last thing that came to my head, which was Boeing. And that, would you agree that with technology comes a huge responsibility? I look at your background in teaching strategy and operation process improvements, differentiating with technology. There's an example. We only know it from layman's point of view of technology that seems to have gone awry and now a complete brand issue for one of the largest airline manufacturers in the world, and the ripple effect of that. So creating technology is one thing, but how do you feel about the responsibility of using technology? How do we teach the world to be responsible with technology?
Sure. So with the velocity that technology is moving and the continued requirement for businesses to adopt, I'll admit it's actually very difficult sometimes to clearly see what the future is going to hold and how soon, right? Everything from autonomous vehicles to artificial intelligence to how do we make sure that we're making the right decisions for technology. I'll tell you, Tom, the only thing, frankly, that is certain is change. And I think everyone has to be ready and able to adapt to those changes. And it's a big part of why I love working for Intel, right? It's not just a company. It's not just the promise of the future. Intel's actually a company that's serious about creating the future. And as the world continues to become smarter and more connected and autonomous and data-driven, Intel's really kind of at the forefront of creating the extraordinary, from 5G to artificial intelligence. And I'll tell you, I'm very, very fortunate to work at probably the only company on the planet that can connect it from edge to cloud. And I certainly believe that not just our the existing leaders of today, but our children are going to face challenges and technologies we can't even fathom today. And it brings to mind Robert Noyce, who was one of our Intel co-founders. And, he eloquently stated, and frankly can sum this all up in one statement, and it's, don't be encumbered by history. Go off and do something wonderful.
I love that. I love that quote. I'm going to go back and listen to this episode just for that. What a great teaching moment, everybody. You've heard from Rachel there. Rachel, I have one more question for you, and then we're going to move to wrapping this up and give you the last word. And that is that I suppose if I got in a room with you and maybe your teammates and we threw this question on a whiteboard, it's probably unfair to ask you in a soundbite, but it's a big vision question. And that is, what will this world look like when you're done your work? So leave us with your thoughts on where you're headed with your passions and the purpose you have. You know, what are you trying to do for the future of this world?
That's a great question, and I'm going to leave you with a couple things. One, regardless of whether you're a Silicon Valley exec like myself or any of the listeners on the phone, whatever it is that you're doing or whatever your passion is, you have to believe in it. Because if you don't believe in it, no one else will either. Like, people often read these articles and I think they think that leadership is about that corner office and, the ability to do all these things. And I'll tell you, it's not true. It's nothing could be further from the truth. I think real leadership is about creating the vision in your heart and in your mind, and then bringing the energy of manifestation to that vision so that others can believe it too. Right? You can call it passion, vision, power. Whatever it is that you believe in, you've got to believe in it so that people will follow you. And, you've got to get out of your comfort zone. You've got to learn new things and encourage people around you to do so. You've got to encourage people to be transparent and authentic to who they are, because frankly, that's where creative ideas and innovation come from. You've got to learn. You've got to talk to people, right? If you keep doing the same thing over and over and over, you're just going to get exactly to where you are. And I also think that you listen way more than you talk. If you can quiet your mind and focus, almost always the answers are there to be seen and heard. You've got to figure that out and believe in it, whether you're there to change the world, whether you're there to leverage technology to help businesses transform themselves, whether you're the voice for that 19-year-old girl who's deciding if she's going to go into engineering or not, or you're the voice of that mom that you see in Target who just looks wild-eyed and is about to cry because she's overwhelmed with being a parent. They're all people, and you've got to help them. Well, we only have one chance at this life, and we got to make it count.
Absolutely. You reminded me of my mind again in another direction. I want to just share this to tie into that great teaching moment you just gave us for our listeners about creating the vision, about listening more than you talk. All those things remind me of a study that was done. It was actually a Canadian study, and they asked 90-year-olds, what were your 3 top regrets? And after all the data came in, they analyzed that these were the answers. I can recall them quickly. One was, I didn't reflect enough. 2, I didn't leave a big enough legacy. 3, I didn't take enough risk. And I want to honor you with 5 leadership words that tie into that, because from what we've heard, you're a woman who's doing all of those things to leave a great legacy for the world. You seem to have a world view from where you are in leadership that's just so inspiring. I write these down, Rachel, while I'm interviewing. I don't script them. These are leadership words. And the first one I want to honor you with is inspiring. You are inspiring. Number 2 is strength. There's something about whether it's your voice or what comes out of you. It ties into my 3rd word of passion. When I hear you speak with such certainty and assurance, you've got a soft side to you, but you are passion. Man, I could follow you in what you're telling me. 3 is transformational. I believe that because you're getting to my heart in this interview so many times. And the last one is humility. I think we knew that from the early part of the call when we were talking about your resume, and for you, it's not about that. It's about everybody else. So congratulations on all your success. The future, I know, ahead of you is going to be so great. want you to tell us how people can maybe connect to you.
Perfect. You can find me on Twitter at Rachel Mushahwar on Twitter. I post everything from what's happening from the technology realm to, the fact that this weekend it was very obvious to me that kids put nothing away except for empty milk cartons. Or you can hit me up on LinkedIn, Rachel Mushahwar as well. And I thank you so much. Again, like I said at the beginning, life is about the people you meet and the things you create with them. So let's go out and start creating and helping each other out. Rachel Mushahwar.
There you go. That's just awesome. Thank you for that. Everybody, listen to the passion and find that passion that you hear from Rachel. Find that true purpose you have in the world and live the life that you deserve and desire. Find this episode on iTunes when it's released. Give it a high rating so we can honor Rachel's work. And Rachel, thank you for being here to share your story.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to The Quiet Warrior Show. Create is a motive-based leadership development firm. www.kreat.ca